All right, so welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're going to talk about building configurations in this session. So again, my name is Chris Zent. I'm the technical product manager for the desktop SDKs, and I really focus on the Pro SDK. So I work closely with the desktop SDK team, development team in Redlands, and we're doing our best to make the best experience for all of you with the Pro SDK. So a quick show of hands, just like we did before, how many of you are currently working with ArcGIS Pro? All right, good number of people again. And how many of you are actually working with the Pro SDK, developing with it right now? Excellent, okay. And how many of you are actually have experience working with ArcObjects over the years? Great, all right. So I can skip all of the introductory slides now, I think, so thanks. All right, so thanks for joining us again. And so this is our agenda. We'll again do a quick sort of overview to get you started here. We'll talk about the solution configurations, and we'll then do 4 demos here. We'll walk through the configuration template, and we'll walk through the 2 community samples that are made available to you with 1.4, config with map and config with Star Wizard. And then we'll walk through the configurations online resources, make sure you guys know where to go to kind of get started and get more information, the Pro concepts, Pro guides, and the API. And then again, we'll do a quick little Q&A and wrap up, and we'll take any questions that you got. All right, so solution configurations are brand new at 1.4. We're really excited about this new functionality because it really allows you the opportunity to configure Pro with a very custom startup experience. It's a brand new pattern and template. So just like we've got an add-in project template, we now have a configurations project template. So you can see that in this top sort of screenshot here. It also provides you this whole opportunity to do solution branding. So when we say that, we mean you can do a custom splash screen, custom start page, you can really sort of make the whole startup user interface and user experience your own. And we're showing a screenshot here of the config with map community sample, which is a really nice one because it walks through all of the different elements of configurations. And this whole concept of conditional or role-based customization, you have the opportunity to, as Pro starts, take a look and introduce your own logic. And you can take an opportunity to determine whether the user is perhaps an editor or a viewer, and customize the interface based upon that user role. So if that person is logged into their ArcGIS Online login and they're an editor, perhaps they're going to be getting some additional editing tools that they would not have had if they were part of that viewer role. So that's what we mean by some of that role-based customization. And you can also use Active Directory. There's some great documentation, as I mentioned, Pro concepts, the Pro guide, the configuration manager, which is the class you're going to be working with to really sort of make that custom startup experience. And that's in the API reference. And as always, we've got some intro blog posts and videos out there to help you get started as well. So here are some screenshots, again, of some of the samples that are out there. This is the config with map. And again, this is the splash screen, a start page, and that whole user interface based on that user role or workflow. As you're working with the start page, you might have a geographic view, or in the case on the far right here, you might be working with a sort of project-centric view. And on the top, you can see a screenshot of the Pro interface with the configuration. It's very streamlined. So you have the opportunity to strip it down to just the tabs and the controls that are really focused on your workflow. So that really can make it a very nice, streamlined user experience. All right, so a few differences, because if you're just looking at add-ins a moment ago, the add-ins and configurations, there's definitely some similarities. You can really, at a basic level, think of configurations as add-ins plus additional functionality. They have all of the capabilities of an add-in, plus that whole additional user interface experience with startup and that conditional and role-based capability. They're both built from the SDK project templates. They are compiled and deployed the same way. Both configurations and add-ins are zip compressed packages which contain your customizations. And both allow for that customization of the UI. That's kind of where some of the things kind of stop. So with add-ins, probably the main thing to think about here is that you can have multiple add-ins per your pro session. And you'll see that as we start up the configurations, we're actually still going to have that capability to access the add-ins tab and any of the add-ins that we just made in the last session. But with configurations, you've got one configuration per pro session. And this is by design. We want this to be a really focused user experience that is intended for an overall experience for your users. And that's right from the startup. So we wouldn't want any conflict with other types of configuration settings. And again, it's all about that custom startup experience right from the Startup Pro. And you're going to see that as we work through some of the samples. So those are some of the similarities and differences. All right, let's get started on our demonstrations here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the project template, what you're really getting out of the box with the configuration template. Then we'll take a look at the two samples that are in the community samples, config with map, config with Start Wizard, and then we'll take a look at those online resources. Okay, we'll open up Visual Studio here. Let's restart it here. All right, and as I mentioned before in the last session, if you have not installed the Visual Studio from the Visual Studio gallery before, that's the recommended way that we have for installing the Pro SDK. So once you've got the Pro SDK installed, we'll go to New Project. And here's our add-in project template. And right below it is the new Managed Configuration project template. I'm just going to go with the defaults here, place it in our temp directory. And as it's starting, it is creating the structure for your configuration project. Just like an add-in, you're going to get the dark images and light images folders, which are, again, to support the new dark theme with 1.4. You can see that these are darker images, which are going to work in that sort of dark theme, high contrast mode. And there's a couple additional images that are placed into the images folder right off the bat here. First is the background. And this is going to be the background image that's displayed by default when you actually start your project. And you'll see it's just a background that's used that we picked to actually give your startup page a little bit of an interesting sort of look. There's a favorites icon, and this is actually the icon that's going to be displayed at the top left of your Pro application. So instead of the standard Pro icon, this is the icon, the default icon that's going to be presented. You could use any icon you want. And this last one is the folder open, and this is just going to be showing up on that start page. Now, most importantly, here are the UI elements that are here in the UI folder. We've got the About page, and this is just going to be a little bit of information that's available to you to place this in the About page above the standard sort of Pro information. So you can put anything in here about your configuration project here and customize the About page here. Here's the splash screen. The default splash screen takes the name of your project. And again, the samples show you how you can really do some really interesting things. Here's the start page. Before you can see the start page, you'll have to build a project. And there's our default start page. Again, there's that image that we showed you just a moment ago. And here's the standard sort of greeting dialog with the browse button. It's going to contain a list of recent projects right here in this pane. So those are the basics that you get. I'm going to scroll down here. And again, just like an add-in, you've got the config.daml. The difference with the configuration is you've got this configuration section. And by default, it's going to choose the configuration manager Configuration Manager 1, which is going to reference our Configuration Manager class right here. Now let's take a quick look at this. You've got the name of the application, which is going to reference by default the name of the project. And here's our link to the icon that is actually going to be presented. And you've got three overrides that are shown by default. One for the startup page, splash screen, and about page. Now, if you wanted to not show the splash screen, for example, and just go with the default ArcGIS Pro splash screen, all you would have to do if you wanted to just keep this is return null instead of the new splash screen. Or you could just delete the override altogether and you get the default. So let's, real quick, now that you've kind of seen the walkthrough of what you get out of the box, let's build it and start it. I haven't done anything at all to this, and you can see our custom splash screen there. It's just the name of the project. And here's our custom startup page. There's all our recent projects. I'll open up that interacting with maps. There's our icon, custom icon. So already it's got a different sort of look and feel to Pro. And that's just out of the box. That's no customization at all. And just come back over here. Here's our about page. And there it's referencing the Pro Configuration 1. Okay, nothing too exciting there, but let's just show you how easy to just make a couple tweaks to this. And I'm just going to change some of the text for you here. But before I do that, I wanted to just show you how when you start a configuration, you might be wondering, what's going to make Pro know that I'm actually starting a configuration as opposed to starting an add-in? Well, right here, if you look at the project properties, come over to debug, you're going to see that there's a command line option that's placed in here, and it's /config : the name of the configuration. So when you're working here in Visual Studio, it's going to take the name of your project, Pro Configuration, and it's going to place it in there. Now, once you distribute your project, distribute your configuration, you're going to have to make your own sort of custom icon here. I'm going to just show you real quick how you would just take that same sort of command line switch and place it into your shortcut. And that's how you actually would start your configuration. All right. So that's important to know when you're looking to start that up. Let's just come back here, just make a couple tweaks to each one of these views. Got this one here. There's some of the rules. All right. Hope you guys agree. Okay. Just real quick, just make a few changes to this. We'll browse. So I've just made a few quick changes to these, and you know that's all I'm really kind of gonna look at doing just for this startup. But again, you can just sort of change some real basic things here, but what's going to be interesting is when we actually show you how this actually works with some of the community samples. Let's start this up. We could have gone into the configuration manager and changed the app title, but all of this is kind of just showing how this is just working really quickly based on how you're using it. Okay. Now you've seen the basic template, let's take a look at some of the community samples, which are really kind of interesting. As I had shown a little bit before, you can go right here to your SDK landing page, and all of the samples are here on GitHub. If you weren't in our session before, all you need to do is download the zip file, and you get all of the community samples right away. Just place them in your hard drive, unzip them, and the two samples for configurations are found in the framework folder. And it's config with map and config with start wizard. So config with map really is showing you all of the different capabilities for the customizations that are possible with a configuration. So let's start it up in Visual Studio. And like I had kind of shown before, you've got the ability to take a look at those samples right here and get a little bit more information about there's config with map right here. More of a description, kind of a walkthrough. That's with all of the samples. You've got more information on each one. Okay, so this is our config with map solution that started up. Like always, you get your dark images and light images, some screenshots there just to help you get started. But here's the UI. Again, our about page. We've got a little bit of information. This is the Acme Electric that we were talking about earlier. Here's the splash screen, custom splash screen with a little bit of animation that's added to it. Start page. And what's nice about this is going to have that sort of geographic view with some sort of WPF capabilities kind of built in to make some of these different county polygons sort of light up with a yellow highlight. And the configuration manager has got some great capabilities built in here. And I'd just like to point you to the onUpdate database override. This is really helpful. This one actually, and the Pro guide that's associated with the configurations, walks you through how this is actually used to remove all of the tabs that are part of the configuration. So you're really getting the capability to focus and streamline your workflow with this type of capability. So we're using this override to update the DAML database however you would like to. Definitely want to be careful with how you're using this because, again, the DAML is the whole UI for Pro. Kind of sets that up. All right, so let's start it and see how this looks. There's our custom splash screen. Here's our sign-in. And I'm going to choose to not sign in here. And if I did sign in, it would show my sign in here over on the start page, which is kind of nice. Here is that sort of geographic view with some of that WPF magic to kind of highlight and show where you've got a selected sort of area. The scenario here is that wherever you're kind of like looking to click on a county, it's going to open up the associated project. So in the county's view, you can sort of see the interaction, how that's done in the code. What this does is once you install these samples, the Pro SDK sample data sets, you can click on San Diego County here, and it's going to start the San Diego project for you. All right, so here is our streamlined configuration UI. Let me close the Create Features pane here. And you can see, again, we've got a custom icon. We've got just a few basic tabs that are made available. We've got the Home tab, the Add-in tab. Our add-ins, there's no problem with using add-ins with your configuration. And we've got some custom buttons that we've added to this UI on the Home tab. Again, a configuration you can think of as an add-in plus additional functionality. So what I've done here, I've selected Powerline supports, which are outside of a 50-meter buffer outside of the inspection route, this road here. And now what I can do is I'm going to use a custom functionality to open up a custom work orders pane that populates it with the selected features. We've just got the 2. And as I click on each one of these, it's going to zoom in on that feature. And so we're zooming in a little bit more with each one of these. Now, kind of the scenario that kind of comes with this configuration is that maybe at a certain scale, I'd like to do some editing. So I come back over to my tab and I can start editing. And you'll notice that when I click Start Editing, the Editing tab appears. So this is a nice example of using conditions within the Pro SDK. And the Pro Guide walks you through how to actually do that very well. So definitely check out the Pro Guide. After I'm done doing some editing, I can come back, hit stop editing, editing tab goes away. I might now want to, after I've done my edits, create a mobile map package, and it runs a GP process for mobile map packages in the background. So it's using gp.execute async and exporting that package. So again, all of the features of a configuration, all of the views, the about page, streamlined UI, using the onUpdate database, override, a lot of nice features that are part of this community sample. So let's now take a look at the config with start wizard community sample. This one is going to show you a lot of different options for your start page. It's a little bit different. It doesn't show you all of the different capabilities of configuration like config with map, but I think you may find some of these start pages very interesting. So under the UI folder, you've got this start pages folder. There's many different start page views that are in there, and you're going to see how these actually look. We've got some of the standard ones that we had just used with config with map with the California counties, and we'll show you how that looks here. Let me just start it right up. So it's going to just use the basic sort of config with start wizard splash screen. And this looks, you may say, okay, this looks just like my standard sort of login here. And so I've got this sort of view, but down on the right-hand side, you've got the pane here, which allows you to actually sort of navigate with some different views. Now we're actually looking at what's more of like a traditional pro start page. And then as we click over here, we're starting to get some interaction with ArcGIS Online. Bring in some projects, templates. We've got a status bar on the bottom left here. And we can open up some of these web maps as part of the default start for a project. So you could use and access your ArcGIS Online organization and start pulling this in right off the bat. There's that sort of view that we had with the California counties before. And again, coming back to the standard sort of view. As I mentioned, it doesn't have a streamlined sort of UI once you start the projects, but again, it's all about the start page, this sample. And it really gives you some different capabilities, and we could have started off with any one of those web maps that we wanted to. All right, so we got just a few minutes. Let me walk you through real quick those configuration online resources. Again, best place to start always is from your SDK landing page here. We'll come over to the concepts on GitHub, and on the far right-hand side, you'll see that there's a new section under framework. Again, these are all of the different topic areas for the SDK. And right here is configurations, and the first is the Pro Concepts guide. Pro Concepts are higher level, but excellent detailed information. It's not so much of a walkthrough as the Pro Guide, but this is going to really give you excellent information about how to build your configurations and really work with many of the different aspects of it. There's some information about the Configuration Manager class. And as I had mentioned before, the Pro Guide does a great job of walking you through that onUpdate database callback. So a walkthrough of the config with map community sample here in the Pro Guide. And there's the onUpdate database. So great way to get started with your configurations is to use those community samples and walk through the Pro Guide. The last thing I want to show you is the API reference. Let's come back here. There's our API reference, top shortcut link. And as with always with our API references, we've got an overview page that we start with. And then right below that is the what's new for developers at that release. There's a highlights section that's right at the top, and we like to point out some of the key additions to the SDK and the API. at the release. So you'll see configurations is right at the top, and we've got a configuration manager class link for you, which can take you over here to the configuration manager class, come down here to the members, and you can see all those methods and overrides that we were talking about are all here. So there's on update database and some additional information there. So definitely check out all three of these when you're getting started with your configurations. Okay, just got a few more slides to show as we wrap up here. Okay, again, just as I mentioned before, we've got a lot of SDK resources out there. Please do take advantage of them. There is, again, a lot of online resources. We're trying to keep you updated through all of these, and with blog posts on the ArcGIS Pro blog. And Pro SDK training. As I mentioned before, this is an excellent introductory overview of the SDK. It's 3 days. It's taught by Educational Services. They do an excellent job. Katie Dalton and Rob Burke. The first class offering is going to be online, and it's offered April 3rd through the 5th. And I heard this weekend that there's still seats available, so if you'd like to sign up, esri.com/training. And it's really an excellent course. I set it on a beta last month, and they're going to do a great job. For questions and follow-up, please do come by the ArcGIS Pro booth. We've got the whole SDK team here. We're here till 4 o'clock today, as long as the showcase is open. And as always, do check out the SDK tab on the pro.arcgis.com main page, and that's where you can get all the links that I was showing you earlier. And for any feedback, again, we're really looking for your feedback as you do development, as you are working with prototyping. The best time to send me some feedback is after you've really done a development project and have an opportunity to really take a close look at the API, at the SDK, all of the templates, how it's working for you, and how you'd like to see the API and the SDK grow. So we're definitely interested in your feedback. There's my email address, so please do reach out. So we got just a couple more minutes. If you've got some questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes. One more time, sorry. It's pretty straightforward. The kind of like the XAML views that I was showing, those are most of the basics that you would need to kind of set up your views for the splash screen. So if you look in the XAML, you'll see how there's different attributes that are associated with each one of those features. Oh, that's a branding, larger branding sort of licensing question, I think. Sort of. Okay, that's a great question. So we have made this as sort of brand generic as we can. So you can see you get all that splash screen, start page, the about page. Right now, the limitation for making it completely look like entirely like your own application, I would say, is with the about page, because there's still going to be that pro information that's there and visible there. So that's the attribution, I think, that you're talking about that will still be visible. Yeah, but everything else is wide open. That's a very good question. Thank you. Yes? Right, so I think your question was, when you launch the configuration, are you required to actually launch it from the shortcut kind of method that I showed? Right, so a configuration has to be launched from the shortcut. So the only way that you can actually get into the configuration is kind of going through that command line option that I showed a little bit earlier. add-ins are a little bit different. Again, that kind of comes back to that sort of that slide with the add-in similarities and differences from the configuration. And the add-ins are only able to be accessed after Pro starts up. Whereas with the configuration, you have that sort of like right from the start startup experience for the UI and the startup. But again, the difference there is that the configuration will start from the command line. Correct. Yep. Yeah. There's a lot of additional, and right. So the configuration, again, you can think of it as an add-in plus that whole additional functionality for that startup experience. Yes. Sorry about that. No, you can actually use add-ins and configurations together. Yep, there's no limitation now. Of course, as I had showed with the config with map, you do have the access to use that onUpdate database method and even remove the add-ins tab. So if you did not want to have any add-ins participate in your configuration, you could do that. And you can also use the DAML to remove the ability to customize the ribbon. So, yeah, great question. Any other questions? If you have additional questions or like to see more, please do come by the ArcGIS Pro booth. So, thank you very much for coming.